Sometimes I buy a game against my better judgment thinking it can't be that bad, can it? I like racing games, or rhythm games usually is where these two come in, because I'll buy almost all of them. And then I play it and think, oh no, you silly sausage, what was you doing? And this is pretty much my experience of having played NASCAR Arcade Rush. This is the PS5 version that you're looking at, and it's taken me so long to get to this review because it's taken me so long to play it properly, because this game is such a slog to play. It's full of really odd design choices, gameplay decisions, and just weird foibles that make you think, has anyone quality reviewed this? And what did they do for any user research or playtesting to make something feel satisfying? Because there's some really good things hidden in here, but they are buried in some wild choices. To start, as the game means to go on, the opening FMV sequence where it introduces you to the game is totally not skippable. You must watch it every single time. And another weird design choice is that whenever you start a race, instead of going 3, 2, 1, go, it starts from 10. And it's those kind of things that make you go, what? And it continues like that all the way through. The handling model in this game is also like a Jekyll and Hyde. Because NASCARs are inherently heavy, bulky muscle machines that you're trying to throw around, and if you've seen any of those NASCARs race on tracks like, say, Watkin Glen, where they can't get round turn 1 without flying off the track and making a mockery of track limits, the same thing kind of applies here, in that you have a really weighty car that's very sluggish to go around various bends, but then sometimes when you hit the boost pads right, your car becomes exceptionally angular and very nimble, and so it flips from one side to the other with very little middle ground, in a way that kind of makes you go, huh? Why are we flipping from one extreme to the other? And what's really interesting is that the tracks, which are all karting, like heavy, high concept versions of real life tracks, for example, all play into like really tight hairpins, or like curves that spiral round on themselves, almost like spiral staircases, or roulette wheels actually is probably the better way to describe it in the real game. And as you race through canyons and go around like surfing wave half pipes, you're flipping from this, it's really heavy, I can barely get round corners, to all of a sudden having all the grip in the world and thinking, this feels quite inconsistent and a bit sluggish and a bit meh. So moving away from the handling to the actual tracks themselves, for me the tracks in this game are the shining star of everything that is good about NASCAR Arcade Rush. It's taken the F1 Race Stars approach to it's real world tracks, but ha 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 ha, we've Mario Karted it. And what I really like is the amount of character and pizzazz and expressionism that has gone into all of these different tracks. Some of them are a bit weird, like some of the places where you go to, it's like, hey, it's Industrial Town, and it looks really grim and horrible. But then others are like really sparkly and bright and colourful, and all of the tracks have a unique personality and feel, and I think that's absolutely superb. I just wished that that same level of boldness applied to the rest of the game, because it all feels very safe outside of the track design. The cars have a couple of different liveries that you can unlock by levelling up by doing races and winning and just grinding away. The grind is quite long in this game, and because there's only, I think, 12 tracks in total, you will see the same thing cropping up time and time and time again and start to get slightly bored of it, because the races aren't long, but the speed of how your cars go round the track isn't as fast as what you think it should be, and so things feel slightly pedestrian, as if the tracks are too big for the cars that are going too slow and feel a bit cumbersome in it all. This then translates to the AI, who are also a little bit ramshackle, and where this kind of starts to fall apart for me is that there's a rivalry system, so that if you hit other cars or do things to other cars, they get angry and then want to attack you back. And they'll swerve in your way and try and like cut you off. But they do it to their own detriment, so then they end up crashing and causing themselves more problems. But NASCAR Arcade Rush also has some extreme rubber banding. You can just chill out for the first lap or two of a race and then race from like lap 3 onwards in most races and still achieve a really good result. Similarly, sometimes you can't get like too far ahead, because then if you make a tiny little mistake, they will punish you for it in the long run. You do have a chargeable boost that you can recharge as you go through the pit lane, and it's usually better to do so because you gain much more with that boost back over time, so it's well worth the trip through the pit lane to do that. But the rivalry system sometimes then takes you taking a trip through the pit as an aggression against other people, and it charts them up for you being then bad and naughty to those drivers. And indeed the rivalry system just decides at random that you've done something horrible to them and keeps notching up scores and making everyone your enemy. In fact, I would go so far to say that the rivalry system is totally broken and doesn't have any resemblance of function or form in this game whatsoever, and should be largely ignored. Taking the game online is also a desolate and sad affair. No one's playing, obviously, which means that you need to coordinate with other people to go and take this game online. But the lobbies are quite difficult and clunky to move around, and quite often I'd find that the game would start to lag and get stuck as it was moving between menus, and it just didn't feel like a cohesive and safe and stable experience. After a good year and a bit, I think I've been able to have one race with someone online and we all disconnected. And that was that. So my experience of the online mode is limited and poor, to say the least. There is some local split screen action to be had here. It seems to run quite nice and fine, and to be fair, once you're inside the game itself, the game doesn't suffer from slowdown or any kind of graphical glitches or anything like that. It runs smoothly. It's just really dissatisfying and unsatisfying to play because of everything that I've mentioned beforehand, and it just doesn't feel like a cohesive, well thought out unit. I think doing this kind of cool arcade version of NASCAR, it's not the first time we've done this. We had NASCAR Unleashed on PS3, which was a technical, magical mystery tour, but actually had some good ideas behind it. I feel like NASCAR, if it was to do an arcade game, racing game again, it should take on a kind of Destruction Derby, real fluid arcade feel to it, and just go absolutely nuts. Yes, I'm sure some people will be like, oh, the cars aren't weighty anymore and this is all unrealistic. Look at what's going on the screen. We don't want realism. We're taking the franchise and trying to do something interesting and new with it. And this kind of weird middle ground where it's not really one thing or another and then makes it feel quite slow and pasty in the meantime, I just think doesn't do anyone any favours. And so whilst I ultimately don't recommend this game, I would quite like to see someone have another stab at this in the not too distant future, because my whistle was wet with all of those cool track designs. It was just the rest of it that didn't click for me, and so I'd love a take two, please, if anyone is listening. I paid some money, I paid my dues, now give me an improved game, please. So, yeah, NASCAR Arcade Rush, give it a pass, I'm afraid, but hopefully something good will come out of it in the future. Higher Plane Games is part of the Higher Plane Network, a completely independent media outlet supported by people like you. The goal is to create the best possible content that cultivates a richer indie scene for games as well as music and entertainment. To find out more and to get involved, visit patreon.com/higherplane-network. Your support makes all the difference, and in return you'll gain access to bonus content and downloads. Thank you for watching.